Hi, everybody. Terry Brown at All Bass No Bull, and this is kind of an old home week deal for me. Every week I kind of talk about how excited I am about an interview, but this one in particular, I got in the sport a long time ago, doing some articles for Bass Times and writing some stuff for Bassmaster and some other stuff. But along comes this guy named Jay Kumar, and he had this great idea. He had this great idea to really make a USA Today of bass fishing, and it was Bass Fan, and I was lucky enough to join him and a gentleman by the name of Scott Laney, and I guess the rest is history. I mean, I look at this relationship I have with Jay as vital to me. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it hadn't been for Jay. So anyway, Jay, welcome to the program.
Hey, my old bud Terry, man. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, well, we kind of always had the band together, even though we didn't have the band together, and I always considered the friendship probably the most important part of this. And I think in fishing, we found out that friendships and partnerships are what make the world go around in fishing. And, I had just written a piece for Wire to Fish, and in it, I said that we can't keep covering our stuff up. We got to let stuff go out of the mix a little bit. And our problem is that all of us have properties. We're all trying to make a dollar. We're all trying to do the things that we need to do. But in reality, if we don't share that information, and heck, I'm 70 almost, and if when I'm gone, the stuff that's in my head goes away unless I share it. So it's very, very important. I know, Jay, you've been a believer in that. Al Linder's a believer in that. We had some great mentors in front of us, whether it be Al Linder or Forrest Wood or Jerry McInnes, or all those people that were involved. They were the ones that kind of led the charge. And now you and I, it's up to us to kind of carry the ball for a while. Don't you believe that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it comes in waves, like they were the first wave, and I don't know which wave we were, but we were a wave and still, going like they are. And then there's another wave that came after that, and et cetera. But yeah, I think we all got to do it our own way. And in our case, it's our thing. If I can speak for you, Terry, was recognizing that the pros and the bait designers and the boat designers and stuff like that, those are the guys who know it all. Those are the guys that we're trying to do the brain extraction on. And we've seen the rise of anybody can have a channel and anybody can do this, which is fine, but still those guys are the peak, man, the top.
Well, we're kind of what they call talking heads. And in reality, I think what we also are sponges. I've never ever wanted to be the guy that was out front. I never wanted to be the guy that was the king of the hill. I never wanted any of that. I always wanted to talk to those guys. That's really what I wanted to do. And I think over 40 years almost now that I've been doing this, I think that's the most important thing. And you mentioned all the pros and all those guys. Well, Bass Fan came along, and it was a great brainchild. I mean, it was funny because all of a sudden we were involved together, and that's how I met you. And, you were writing for Bass Times before that, so was I. And then all of a sudden, Bass Fan comes out, and man, we rocked it. The world went crazy with Bass Fan. And then, of course, we had opportunities to get out of that and do something else, and you and I both did that. And, man, the rest is history. Here we go. And now you've got Bass Blaster, and it's going nuts. I mean, that's a couple days a week, or how many times are you doing that a week?
Yeah, a couple. I used to do it literally 5 days a week early on and played with different, frequencies, and people seem to like it twice a week. So that's what we've got.
Well, it probably takes a little bit of the effort away from you. If you're doing it 5 days a week, I can't even imagine, what you're doing 5 days a week. But, I like it because it's hip. It's up to date. It's young feeling. It's got a lot of energy. And I know you're trying to dig into the things like we used to do at Bass Fan all the time. We always tried to dig into the things that maybe everybody didn't know about. And you're doing it on a daily basis. So it's got to be a labor of love for you.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. It always is. I mean, like, you want, as a media guy, and you're the same way, like, just we cover the stuff that we're interested in, and my my natural excuse me, inclination is to go down the path of uber detail, basically, like, Bass Fan did in the first, well, not in the first place, because I kind of took a little bit from In Fisherman, a little bit from Bassmaster. But yeah, man, that's just the latest, greatest. And I don't care if somebody's 17 or, 67, they're going to know something cool, and it's just trying to extracted from them. That's all.
Well, I used to do this thing called the man cave, and in that man cave, I used to just give tips and things that I used to think about. I mean, organization's one that you can never do too much of, and as you gain years, you find out you have more crap than anybody in the world. I've got more crap back here sitting behind me that I give a lot away. I really do, and I really believe it's important for me to give a lot to charities and to kids and high school programs, college programs, and I do a bunch of that. But once you get so much crap, you have to have some way to organize it. And here, since I kind of retired from wired to fish a little bit, I've been trying to do that. My wife even says it looks good back there, so I'm feeling a little bit better about it. You know, we have to be able to nurture our sport. Our sport right now needs it. There's a lot of conjecture. There's forward-facing sonar questions, and leagues are changing almost daily. And I think it's important for us to be as flexible as we possibly can as media people to help convey that message.
Yeah, I mean, like change is fine. It's good. It's always gonna be disruptive. Like some people ride that wave, and some people get left behind. Even like with Bass Fan, man. I mean, we changed a lot, and some people hated it. Really hated it. And were people in our business, they hated us, and that was interesting. But anyway, that just happens and goes with the territory. I would say on the technology front, Terry, and you know this, I've said this, it isn't just forward facing sonar. That's just the latest, greatest thing we're dealing with right now. And with all this stuff about, investing billions of dollars in server farms and AI and all this other stuff, like that's just the front leading edge of how technology is going to change fishing right now. And so I think, they have to change things around because the tech part is changing so fast.
Yeah, I had an old boss at State Farm when I worked there. He told me, he said, seen a lot of change, been against most of it. And I think we have two fields of thought there. Is that you can either embrace it. I mean, we're not using persimmon shafts in our golf clubs anymore. We're not, the basketball players are 6'11". When I played, they were 6'6", was big. When you start looking at how things change that way, you can either evolve with it, or you can, like you said, be left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really do think that, the bass fishing business, and particularly BASS, has a responsibility to preserve what it can going forward, just like the NFL or Major League Baseball or, whatever. Like, I'm sure they could all have amazing, like, graphite bats and digital this and that, and a football that flies, 99. You could throw it from the side and it'll still turn into a spiral, that kind of thing. But they've preserved it, and I think we got to kind of, do the same. I'm saying that as an observer. I'm not an angler. I don't own a league. I'm just saying, like, that has to be part of the equation too. Can't all be just running after the latest tech thing and then seeing what happens later.
Well, you make a very good point. I think that ultimately we're fans. I'm a fan of the outdoors. I'm a fan of fishing. I'm a fan of kids. I'm a fan of a lot of things. But the basic thing with the leagues, like with Bassmaster, we have to be a fan of them. We have to be a fan of FLW, which is now MLF. We have to be a fan of the NPFL. That's our job, and that's what we have to do. And you really can't take sides. I've had my opinion asked of me. I'm sure you have as well. What you think of the new technology, right? Yeah. Oh, you get asked every day, and I tell them I don't have an opinion. I mean, I do. I do have one, but I'm not going to tell anybody what it is. And the main reason for that is I don't want to skew their thought. I want them to continue to be able to think that. And I think being open-minded is almost as critical as anything else we've got going right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a couple quick things. One is my guidepost is, what would Ray Scott do? I mean, we both knew Ray. I'm not going to claim to have his brain, but watched him, talked to him, and I just try and think, okay, what would he do, or what would he say, or what would he be for or against, and have that inform my thinking, not to be Ray Scott, but to understand kind of the perspective, the right perspective to have, because he was always about protecting certain things and growing the whole thing. And I think everybody wants that same thing. Not everything is protected. It didn't always stay the same under Ray Scott, not even by, or Helen, not by a million years. But so that's one thing. And the other thing about being fans, Terry, is when we were at Bass Fan and we did that Top Gun Championship, which almost no one remembers. And just to remind everybody, we paid everybody an appearance fee. There was no entry fee. It wasn't a free championship. It was FLW versus Bass guys. We paid everybody to show up, had the weigh-in a Cabela's, which might have been the first time anybody ever did that in a Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops parking lot. And then if you remember, we tried to hand the keys to the PAA at the time. We're like, hey, we're not in the tournament business. We just wanted to prove that you could do this, make money, and televise it nationally, which we did. And they didn't want anything to do with it. And my feeling was, all right, you just got to love bass fishing for where it's at. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Nobody's going to change the world with it. It's just awesome the way it is, and it's awesome the way it's going to be, and that's that.
Yeah, Brent Chapman won that thing, and we paid him too a lot of money and a big cup and all kinds of other stuff. There's a banner. It's in my shop out here behind me, and I stole it just for the record. It's of that tournament, and every time I come in the office, I look up there and I go, man, I think wow, that was really cool. We did that thing, and it was not done by an army. It was done by a few of us, and some of the things we did on the fly, like bringing Fishburne in a cop car. He was chased in to do the MC in a cop car, and all the stuff that we did there was by the seat of your pants. But it won, and it was really good, and the guys liked it, and used the world rankings to be able to do that. But we could do it much easier now because you've got all these leagues with Anglers of the Year and stuff, so you could do it much easier now. I think the growth of the sport comes from something like that. I don't think you can continue to rest on your laurels with the Classic and the Red Crest and all the other stuff that goes on with it. I think something like that's needed.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Terry, but I was asked to do it again, now, because they have the clear separation again. Guys don't fish both. They can't fish both. And, man, I think we could do it. Maybe we should, Terry.
Serious gear for serious anglers. DD26 delivers tournament-tough performance you can trust. From the front to back of your boat, DD26 has you covered. DD26. No shortcuts, just badass American-made gear.
I'm up for it, man. I tell you, I'm sitting back, laid back with my feet on my desk most of the days, so I'm looking forward to doing any kind of challenge. It's funny, Ricky Botsford and I got talking about this, and Ricky, at Bass 365, and he said, hey, I want you to do a podcast. And I said, you nuts? You don't want me to do a podcast. No, he said, yeah, I want you to do it. And I've been doing it now. I think I've done this. I think you're number 10, maybe something like that, or 11. And really what I'm trying to do more than anything else is give people kind of the underbelly a little bit. Denny Brower was my first Bass Fan radio guy, right?
Hey,
so
Denny Brower was the first article on Bass Fan, first post on Bass Fan too.
Well, see, that worked out well because I looked at it, I had him on radio, and I'm like, I got to have him on first. And I had Shaw, and I had Luke Stoner from Dynamic, and you, and of course other guys. But I want people to understand this is a kind of a big machine in a small industry. What we're doing and what we're trying to do is make this more mainstream. And I think if you do that and the people to talk to like you and the guys who really cut good ground, new ground, that it's important for the fan to be able to understand that.
To understand the guys who did certain things, you mean?
Well, that and the history a little bit. And, you were talking about Major League Baseball, and I'm a big Major League Baseball fan. I'm a Cardinal fan, but that doesn't do me any good right now. But the thing that I think is important is the history of the sport. That's why you have wooden bats still, is that if you had aluminum bats, home run totals are going to go through the roof. Move the fences in and use aluminum bats, and you'll have more home runs. But you lose the integrity. You lose the integrity of the sport. And I think that's why bass fishing has to be real careful about some of the things they do moving forward and making some of those good decisions that aren't going to impact the sport adversely, because the history of the sport is every bit as important as anything else. If you went and asked 50 college kids, 100 college kids who Rayo Breckenridge was, they wouldn't have any idea. The guys like Trip Weldon and Ken Duke and those guys, they know it like the back of their hand. And our late great Tim Tucker, who I love to death. That those kind of people are very, very important because they kept the legacy alive and they kept it in their writing and on TV, whatever. I think the legacy and the history of our sport is really, really critical.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I mean, I was joking with Davey Height, like a bunch of the young guys on the elites don't even know that Davey fished,
Yeah,
let
right,
alone what he accomplished,
right.
and it's like, man, how is that even possible? You know what I mean? It's our sport isn't that old. It's 50 something years old, and so all these kids came up, I guess, like young people will do, focused on techniques and winning. But you're right, dude. I mean, some people, I think a lot of guys don't even know who Ray Scott is. I
Right.
mean, how could you not know who Ray Scott is? Like, how is that even okay? I mean, I don't know how you fix that or do that or whatever, because a bio about Ray Scott isn't necessarily going to be as sexy as how Jacob Wheeler caught him last week. But man, I agree with you, man. I mean, it's got to be. It's like I'm a guitar player. I got a bunch of guitars hanging around here, and it's like learning all the fancy stuff and never learning the influences of the guys who came up with all that stuff to kind of really figure that out and get it into you. Or it's like listening to a pastor talking about the Bible and you never read it yourself. Like, come on, man, know who Ray Scott is and know who all these older guys are and who won the classic when and how did they do it and what was going on. Like, it will enrich everybody. The person studying it will be enriched, and then he'll pass some nugget on to somebody and they'll be enriched. I totally agree with that, Terry.
It's funny because I've probably been around this thing and doing what I've done longer than anyone. I mean, a lot of my peers are not here anymore. So, I kind of consider myself probably the oldest guy that does this now. And, maybe I'm not, but there's probably some others that might be older. But, I went through this whole stage. I went through the Cliff Crafts and the Stanley Mitchells and the Denny Browers and the Tommy Bill. I went through that whole group all the way back to the All American that Ray started, right? I mean, after the All American, when they flew around and did what they did, I think I was at the first, second, or third Bassmaster Classic. And I've got this, that dates me pretty bad. But in reality, I went to the weigh-ins. I went to every weigh-in that they had a tournament for, and I sat through the whole weigh-in. And everybody, are you nuts? That's the most boring thing in the world. But I did it out of respect for the angler who made it. And now, we've got the EQs and we've got this and we've got that and ways to get in through the opens and all the other stuff that goes on that really wasn't there so much. And the Federation, it's kind of changed a little bit. I'm not sure it's good. I think that we've got to, get some youth back into the Federation. I think that's happening, but it's slow. But I think that history part, the part that I know about that have been around for a long, long time, it's okay to know it, but you don't want to, I'm kidding you about this, but I had a guy tell me one time, he said, don't follow your passion. It's okay to bring it with you, but don't follow it. And I think sometimes people say, he's an old guy, he doesn't know anything about anything. And in reality, I think we know a lot about a lot of things. And, guys like you that are out there hustling, doing the things you're doing with Bass Blaster, whether, that stuff or target walleye, target crappie, all the things that you're engaged with, I think it's important that we have that. And I think that the walleye game seems to be changing a little bit now. Do you agree with Matt with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm couple of arms lengths away from walleye fishing, so but definitely paying attention to it more than I ever have in my life. First of all, those guys are incredible anglers. I've been in a boat with a couple of them and super impressed. And then, I say super impressed. That probably is ridiculous, but I'm coming from a bass fishing bias where the pro bass guys are the best at everything. And, so those guys are really good. It does seem like the pro tour over there is there's one and they're doing so-so. So I'm not, and that's happened before, as you know, in walleye fishing, like it went away. Pro tour went away.
Then there was none.
Yeah, for years. So that's weird. But they were ahead of us with technology. They would have, 2 trolling motors and, 4 screens when we had, 2 screens and 1 trolling motor. So they kind of embrace forward-facing sonar as much less of a big deal. So that's different and good or bad depending on your perspective. And those guys are winning, the guys who are good with it. So I'm not real sure what the rules are over there, but I think they got probably bigger problems on the tour side, just from what I've read. I'm not talking to anybody, but and that is a little sad to see, Terry, in a way. It's because that is a great market for the business, and they should be doing gangbusters, and I'm just not sure why they're not.
Well, Forest Wood, I was at a Ranger Boats factory tour deal where we came every year. If you're on the pro staff, then you came to this deal, right? And somebody raised their hand in the back of the room and said, "How come the live wells aren't bigger in our walleye boats?" And he said, "Why do you need a live well for a walleye boat? They're the best eating fish in the world. A stringer will work. And that's how far we've come.
Yeah.
That's how far we've come. They're sitting in a room, him with his cowboy hat and the most congenial guy you'll ever meet in your life. I always thought he was another Ray Scott. I really did. And
Mhm.
I love that guy. And I always told him he should have been president. If he'd have been president, I think we'd have a lot better situation than we have sometimes. But I believe that the technology part of this is always going to evolve. Bass boats have changed dramatically. I wish the prices had come down because most of the kids can't get in them, can't get in them really unless you have wealthy parents. So it's tough. It's tough to get in our sport and really get to the highest level. I think I'm going to give you one kid, Trey McKinney. He's an
Yeah.
Illinois kid, so I'm biased, all right? But that young man has taken and run with the ball faster than anybody I've ever seen. He beat everybody's brains in Illinois. And then
Mhm.
he went out and got in the opens and then made the elite series. And now he's doing remarkably well. And he's 20 years old. So, they're learning faster, they're learning younger. And I think the best is ahead of us. I really do.
Yeah, well, I hope so, man. Talking about Forrest, a quick story is when I went to my first classic, which I think was 91, maybe. I had the long hair, the whole thing, and I was like the token Yankee media guy basically there. And both Ray and Forrest came up to me to say hello. And of course, I was floored and blown away. But the thing that I realized is they were not just welcoming me, they were checking me out because it was their thing. They wanted to make sure that, I don't know if it was conscious or subconscious or just how they did things. They were just hoping or looking for any red flags. And I guess they didn't see any, which was great. But, I think there's some of that still has to go on. Not that it's somebody's thing like it was for Ray and for Forrest, because he helped build, the whole thing with Ray. But like we got to be careful. Like, not everybody who's going to come in here and, hoist trophies, maybe they're not the greatest for it. I'm not saying kick them out. I'm just saying, like, back in the day, man, Ray and or Forrest would have a super frank talk with that person and lay down the law basically. And then in terms of the young thing, I mean, that's, scroll through any social media and you see kids like playing, Neil Peart of Rush parts when they're 3 years old, on the drums. I mean, that's just the way it's gone. And that's great, because hopefully it leads to bigger things down the road. But so far, it just means they learn faster and earlier. I haven't seen nobody's better than the drummers I grew up with. Nobody's better than the guitar players I grew up with. And yeah, there are guys who are better at forward-facing sonar than the older guys that you and I know, but are they better overall fishermen? I mean, it's tough to say.
I've got my favorite TikTok right now as a dad who's probably 25 maybe. And he's got a 3-year-old son that's hitting a baseball better than anybody I've ever seen at that age. I mean, and he can't hardly talk. He's very, he's just starting to learn to speak. And he's hitting a baseball and he's got a great swing. And I want to follow that kid. I want to follow him and see if he carries that ball on, carries that through. And I think that's what I'm doing in fishing too a little bit. I love watching the bass fishing guys crappie fish. I'm a little bit different that way, but I love watching them go out and do something that they're not good at, right? Or something that they're not paid to do. And I
Right.
think that's fun to watch too. I watch a ton of video every day, and I think that's really important. But Jay, we've got a job to do. We got to find some younger media people. We got to
Yeah.
find some people that, are engaging, that want to be involved. If you could name two guys that are following this sport that are media people that are under 25, I'd like to know it because I don't know any. And there's a lot of guys in that 30 to 40-year-old or 30 to 45, but we got to get some younger guys that look at this as an opportunity to have a great job.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand that media can be a career. Like I've heard in those, when guys go to colleges and talk to the bass teams, they know about the pro side, pro fishermen, and they know about the industry side, working for Rapala or Strike King or Ranger or Vexus or whatever. But it never occurs to them, and I guess nobody who talks to them, that there's a media side of this business that you can have a career in. But that's the second part. And I'm just not sure how many young people understand what a career is, not just a job or a job for a period of time or getting paid for a period of time. Like, man, it's just like fishing. Like you got to put in your time, you got to work hard, you got to want to get somewhere in life. And if you're going to have a wife and a family and a house, you need a career, not a job. So I've just run into that, the fact that people don't understand that this is a career or could be a career. And that, man, you got to make the sausages every day, every single day, rain or shine, flu or healthy, you're making sausages.
Well, back to the Bass Blaster a minute. I know that if you have to live under a rock not to know what it is, but if I wanted to know more about Bass Blaster, where do I go?
Yeah, you just go to bassblaster.com. You can sign up. It's a twice weekly email. We also do a bunch of videos. You can go to the my Bass Blaster YouTube channel, see the top 5 of the week videos there. But really what it's the latest and greatest, like you said before, Terry, and also something that actually you mentioned, dude, early on when we worked with each other back in the Bass Fan days, just to be relentlessly positive. And that doesn't mean whitewashing everything like, hey, this guy shot somebody. It's all good. We don't do that kind of thing. But what I mean is, there's so much negative media out there, the algorithms on social media that favor negative comments and negative posts. So we definitely keep it light and fun, but there is a boat ton of juice in most of those emails because it's for fishermen.
Well, I always say relentless pursuit and be kind. And I think if you do both of those things and you work your butt off, you can be 70 years old sitting at your desk talking to Jay Kumar if you really work at it. And, Jay, I think it's neat. I hope we get to get the band together, get a little bit more often. And, it started out a long time ago, man. I mean, I think about Bass Fan, your concept and us just jumping on board was something else. And the name in itself is cool because if you are and you love the sport, you're a Bass fan. So I appreciate you being with us today at All Bass No Bull, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, Terry, thank you, man. Love you, brother.
Love you, man.